said, call it democracy, call it democratic socialism.
Enemy killing spree.
There has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person will run.
Stay right there. We are going to take
God, dude.
This lady's a psycho.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Who?
Heal by fire.
When you're playing as?
Mordekaiser. Fucking busted. Yeah, why are we like... Why are we challenging this, bro?
An ally has been slain.
It's like, has anyone ever told her, like, maybe we should practice not, like, looking like this on air all the time? You know? Maybe we should work on.
Dude, she legit fucking killed her entire team.
Not looking like a total psycho right on air all the time, right? Anyways, right. Yeah, so anyone that's a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist is definitely not a communist. Definitely not a communist. They have the same ideologies, the same belief systems, the same political agendas. They have the same communist playbook, but they're not a communist. And by the way, never trust these psychotic foreign operatives whenever they tell you that they're not going to do something. You should absolutely take these people at their word, because they absolutely are. They're about it. They will install a communist agenda. It's in their favor right now, so, because the next generation of the Democrat Party is clearly more radical, is clearly more satanic, is clearly more embracive of the communist agenda, the new satanic operation and belief system of the occult. And clearly that's the future and the direction that they are all going in simultaneously. The people at AOC, Leon Omar, Lee, that fat loser, we're gonna get to her too, because she's claiming that ICE is feeding illegal aliens cockroaches. And it was debunked, because they're liars. But here, you can clearly see the deceptive tactics. The guy doesn't even attempt to deny it. He just tries to reword it in a politically correct framework in order to keep the low IQ voters. I don't know how many people that actually is, you know. I don't know. I don't know who watches this show. But clearly he's taking the politically correct path. And he's an insane communist who wants to defund the police, an insane communist that is clearly anti-American, an insane communist that is on the record with these beliefs. And he runs in these circles, and he's propped up by these people. They all view him as the answer to what they all want. And that's a communist
Dropped a donut.
utopia.
The fuck
There's
you
no
mean,
such
dog?
thing as a democratic socialist
He
utopia.
got 0 kills and 7
And that's why they'll
deaths.
always
Let's
argue,
drop
because
on
they're
your
low
donut.
IQ, that, oh, well, you know, they just did it, the Soviets didn't do it right. The Venezuelans, they didn't do it right. Communist Cuba, they didn't do it right either. But we're gonna do it right because, you know, we got it right. That's always the fallacy, and that's always the lie that they tell themselves as they embrace this same destructive satanic ideology that is truly a destroyer of nations. But again, I want to reiterate the point, and I really do hope that people are truly paying attention to this, because a guy like this is clearly influential. And the next generation, as I've been telling you guys, the next generation of the Democrat Party, more AOCs, more Rashid Tlaibs, more Ilhan Omars, costs.
I literally burned all my. I suffered.
Powerful
Flip the shekel, Alex. It is. If you find me, become the 90,000th Riga here on Drew Hernandez Live, and then onward to 100K. All right. Big debate going down right now between Nicholas J. Fuentes and Dinesh D'Souza. And I got respect for both of these guys for sure. And I did want to tune into this. Let me just pull up the InfoWars feed here. And like I said, we're going to get to the news as well, but I did want to catch this. I'm going to go back a little bit to when they really got going here. Where's it at? Let me go forward. And once this is up, guys, we'll get straight into the news.
This is off to the races, so I'm going to flip. Have the first 5 minutes here, so I'll just say Dinesh D'Souza's head.
Come on, dude.
Flip the shekel, Alex.
Dude, you stuck.
Dinesh D'Souza. All right,
Of course.
So we'll go now to Dinesh D'Souza and get his first 5 minutes. Then we'll go right to Nick Fuentes. And then after that, we probably won't hear 30, 45 minutes. I'm going to try to shut up.
What just happened, dog? You coughing?
Frustrating than these debates where there's constant eruption. So, Dinesh, thanks for accepting this debate. I'm glad it happened, glad it got done. Thank you so much. You've got the floor for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome, Nick. I am looking forward to our debate, and you know, it's I'm thrilled to do it because been under attack, and you guys, Alex, Nick, Laura Loomer, and others have been deplatformed. I am a strong opponent of all of this, and for this reason, even though some people were like, why do you want to debate Nick Fuentes? I'm like, no, there are taboo issues here that are being raised. They're not being adequately discussed. Some people run away from them. I don't run away from them. And I think it's a good idea. And so that's really why I'm here. Not being adequately discussed. Some people run away from them. I don't run away from them. And I think it's a good idea to sort of have it out. And so that's really why I'm here.
Respect.
Fuck.
Respect.
I want to defend Trump. I want to defend MAGA, make America great again. I want to defend America. We have a big disagreement here about what talk about making America great again, it's important to think about what made America great in the first place. Now, one obvious answer to that is that America became great by kind of looking inward and attending to its own problems, going back to the founders. But that is not only not entirely true, it's not true at all. Right after the American founding, Thomas Jefferson found out that there were these Barbary pirates in the Middle East. Now, they weren't attacking America, they weren't starting a war over here, but Jefferson basically dispatched an armed force to clobber them, to beat the heck out of them. Why? Because they were disrupting our interests, they were disrupting our they were hurting our position in the world. So even though we had this infant democracy, clobbering bad guys is something that we started doing from the very beginning. Now fast forward to, Alex, you and I are in Texas, and let's talk about the middle of the 19th century. Again, America's building a strong country, it's focused inward, but guess what? We get into a big war with Mexico. The Mexican War lasts about 4 years. We started the Mexican War. We go over there, get our troops into Mexico City, clobber the Mexicans, take a good chunk of Mexico, including a good chunk of Texas. Later, large parts of the country that were not part of America become added to the country, and we do this basically by force. Now, we have good reasons for it. I'm not going to go into the reasons, but the point is we did it. Fast forward now, I'm going to omit World War II and focus on Reagan. The Soviet Empire, right? The Soviet Union grabbed 9 countries.
Omit World War II?
Actually, between 1974 and 1980. They don't
It's a big omission.
They're not waging war here. And Reagan does not start a war with them either. But what he does do is he starts clobbering them in all kinds of ways. He clobbers them in
Welcome
Afghanistan,
to Summoner's
in
Rift.
Somalia, in Angola, in Mozambique, in Nicaragua, and we do it by supporting armed forces that are repelling these Soviet
30
armies.
seconds
We win
until
the Cold
minions
War.
spawn.
Who can deny that the world is better off and America's better off? That is America first. And that is making America great again. So when we're talking about making America great again, it has never meant, and it doesn't mean for Trump, a kind of, isolationism. I would even deny that it means no new wars. And I say that because no president who takes an oath to support the Constitution can make that absolute guarantee.
Minions have
There are
spawned.
all kinds of scenarios, and I'm happy to lay out about 6 of them, in which the United States would be drawn into a war. And so the pledge is made as a statement of principle, but Trump is the commander-in-chief, and it's his decision to make at a given time when the situation is dangerous enough that there should be a war. Now, there isn't a war going on in Iran, but I do want to say about
Then why run on no new wars?
this is, I think, people think,
Yo, dog, you there?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a hypothetical and just take it as a, it might be an illogical question. It's just you gotta test your priorities, I guess. Would you rather have a small house, like maybe what you have now, maybe even smaller, but a lot of money? Or would you rather have a super massive house, but not that much money, but you can easily afford to live in the house and afford basic stuff, just not indulge?
And you're saying a house like this to myself?
Well, if it's for yourself, then it would be smaller. Like, it would be pretty, not like stupidly small, but it would be smaller. But yeah.
Would it have a main floor and basement?
Yeah.
How many bedrooms?
I appreciate you doing this
Let's just say 1, 2 at the most.
Does it have a backyard?
Yeah, but it's very small.
And how much more money would I have in that scenario versus the other one?
I don't know how much exactly, but let's just say like you could basically buy most things that you desire that aren't like insane.
But in the other scenario, what can I buy again?
Basically like how your parents would be, I guess. But you have a big house.
I'll take the other scenario.
The smaller house, but a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take that.
Putting our country first, making America great again, and pursuing the American strategic interests. And without going into the Barbary Wars or Reagan or any of that.
So obviously it's a stupid hypothetical, because if you have a big house, you could probably afford other things too, and vice versa, you can afford shit if you have a small house. But
Yeah.
An ally has been slain.
They're led by religious zealots and fanatics. They're racing. And I would say that framework probably would say that it's justified. I'll clarify a couple of things. In the first place, this is not the first regime that has been described this way. When we were at war with the Soviet Union, it was conservative military. The Soviets are a cult. Khrushchev destroyed the United States. Of course, we negotiated with them. And eventually, we negotiated with Khrushchev and the wall came down and we had to go to war. We said the same thing about Maoist China. They killed 70 million people. They're a communist death trap. We negotiate with them all the time. I don't think anybody would argue that communism is
Scooby-Doo.
to take over the planet. It certainly did. It always had. Yet we negotiated. Let's also talk about Iran's nuclear program. And once again, let's sort of do some housekeeping. Iran does have a nuclear bomb. They're not currently pursuing a nuclear bomb. And what you would call Iran is a nuclear threshold state. They're engaging in something, and this is technical, it's called nuclear hedging. This is where you have the technology, the expertise, and the infrastructure to make a nuclear weapon, but you don't actually build one. Why do you maintain the threshold latent nuclear status? You
Do it at any
maintain that
moment.
in the event that the security situation changes. Not just Iran, but Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. They're all considered nuclear threshold states. The expertise, the infrastructure, the technology to make a bomb. Why do they have that expertise? Why do they maintain the threshold status? Because they're on the nuclear program. Hedging in the event that they need to deter a threat from a regional adversary. Does this sound familiar? Why is Iran pursuing nuclear hedging? Why do they have a threshold status? They have this because Israel is the only country in the Middle East, actually. They have a nuclear arsenal of nuclear bombs. Israel's the only country with a nuclear arsenal, and they're able to use it. Let's also talk about a democratically elected prime minister wanted to nationalize Iran's resources and put Iran first. He was overthrown by the media. The United States installed a brutal dictatorship. The Iranian people revolted against it. Ever since, the United States and Israel have been at war with Iran, and we've destroyed all their neighbors.
go, Brown.
It's been 10 minutes. You guys are both smart about the power. So at this point, just let the next come back and counter that, and then you guys just this is a real debate. You guys can have a free for all. Just pitch it back to the match. You can leave off where you were last time.
Jump in, interrupting. The idea that the Soviet Union was said to be some kind of a maniacal, nihilistic power. No one ever said that. Destruction on that was based on the idea that you have completely and each of them understand that the deployment of nuclear weapons, the one against the other, will meet with catastrophic retaliation. Was like the suicide bomber of Brezhnev or any of the Soviet leaders going back to Lenin. We knew that they valued life. We saw them as protecting their own interests. So the idea that there's some kind of a, we've heard all this before with Russia and China, that's not true. The idea of negotiating
Oh my god, it's a fucking double kill, bro. Hit him, just hit him.
that
Double kill.
fundamentally stupid. It misses what human nature is all about. It misses the lessons of Machiavelli and Clausewitz and Rousseau. It misses the idea that these are simply destructive ways that powerful countries advance their own interests. No one is going to make a treaty because they want to. You make treaties because you have to. You make treaties by and large in which you concede things that you would have lost anyway on the battlefield. Let's look at Iran, for example. If it's true, first of all, a word about Mossadegh. I heard Nick use the word democratic. Mossadegh was not democratic. He was in fact a dictator. Let's remember that the Shah was free. So if you have a dictator who's running the country, how does someone get democratically elected? So I think this is actually picking up a talking point from the left. A bogus talking point also. By the way, the first thing that Mossadegh did when he came in, he dissolved Parliament. So this dissolves the very parliament that supposedly put him in power. So he was an autocrat, always no different than the Shah. There was a power struggle. Yes, the CIA was
Allah.
Mossadegh was overthrown. Mossadegh business was in 1953. Are you telling me that the Iranians were really mad, but they decided to go on a 25-year vacation and then decided, okay, let's work ourselves up into a frenzy 25 years later? The reason we got Iran is basically because Jimmy Carter decided that the Shah was a desperate, secret police, pulled the Persian This is the nincompooplery of Jimmy Carter trying to get rid of what he saw as the bad guys. That's the worst. And we had a regime.
Respond to that, but I'm going to jump in a bunch. This is great. Before we get into the current stuff, the final Trump saying they may have a peaceful Monday, the Israel lobby, all of that. I'm going to stop there. Nick, come back. You guys circle back.
Sure, I would come back and, I don't want to turn it into a big history thing about the Soviet Union and communism, but I would say that's simply not true. I mean, it was credible, and this is what the Pentagon believed in the late 60s and early 70s, is that the Soviets thought that they could survive or strike against the United States. The idea that mutually assured destruction was always the law of the land, there's this revolution in diplomacy because of nukes, it's just belied by doctrine. And during the 60s and 70s, we believed the Soviets were more powerful than us, they had more nukes than us, and we thought that they were going to strike us first. They thought they could survive it. However, it's the same. Global evolution, domino theory, global revolution. It was the exact same stuff that they say about
Hear it to this day.
change in the Soviet Union and to go in and decapitate the regime with airstrikes.
An enemy has been slain.
I would say that's in the first place. We don't need to revisit history. The second place is also really not here nor there. The exact point is this. Islamic Revolution enjoyed broad support in Iranian society. What took place ever since then is regime change. One, regime change operation That's the business we do. And we do it no matter who it is. We do it against secular dictators. We do it against people that cooperate with us and those that don't. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons in 2003. We backed airstrikes against him anyway in 2011. Saw the dismantlement of his we went to war against him in 2003. Syria, overthrown and ISIS in power. This is the history of the Middle East. And this gets to the reason of why Iran wants nuclear weapons. It's not because they want to kill us.
Dominating.
Speaks to why they would want to nuke. There's a lot to say here, but go ahead.
Yeah, one of the most
Unstoppable.
Dude, every fucking game's gonna fucking surrender. Holy shit.
Iranian Revolution, but the mullahs in that power struggle took power. They have ruled dictatorially over Iran now since 1979. They've made the Iranian Revolution successful. But the key to understanding that revolution, going all the way back from when they seized the American hostages to the strike on Beirut, that Iran has been sponsoring terrorism. They have tentacles in Venezuela, South America. They have cells in the United States. They are making an alliance with Russia and China to create a kind of axis of power. So to the degree, Nick, that you're saying that this is, a global chessboard, I agree. And I think that, in a way, puts an interesting question for us, which is that isn't it a fact that there is a jihadi or radical strain of Islam? This ultimately is what is driving along the Muslims, right? They are Hezbollah, Hamas. It doesn't matter whether they're Shia or Sunni. Hamas is Sunni. Why is Iran funding Hamas? Because they don't care about those distinctions at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they care about whether you're an infidel, yes or no. This radical Islam is a global ideology. Look, you can say the mullahs keep saying it, I don't believe it, but you should believe it. When the Russians said that they wanted a global triumph of communism, they meant it. We took it seriously. And by the way, we didn't end the Soviet Union through some sort of a treaty. We ended the Soviet Union by bankrupting them. Reagan ultimately defeated them in the Cold War. It was not a treaty. It was they were out of gas. They couldn't compete in an arms race. We were building MX missiles and putting multiple warheads on them. We were building a missile shield. We were supporting guerrilla revolutions around the world. Ultimately, Afghanistan became, by their own admission, a bleeding wound. So this is why the Soviets gave in. They didn't give in. No country ever gives in because of a treaty. The idea that communism abolished itself, Eastern Europe was freed because we put a piece of paper in front of them and went, oh, okay, let's get rid of all of this stuff. We were once a global empire. We'll now become a second-rate superpower. That's not how it happened at all. And that's a misunderstanding of Iran. Islam is a conquering force. The Muslims came out of the Arabian desert. How do you think they conquered the Holy Land? They took Jerusalem. They took Syria. They took Jordan. They conquered Iran by force. That's how they got it. They are the occupier of Iran.
Okay, Dinesh, and by the way, you're both very smart men. I've studied the history. You're both, accurate in the basic facts.
I like when Alex
Very
pops in.
interesting. I'm not saying the general public's dumb, but even really smart people really, most of them can't find around on the map.
Settle's gonna shut up.
I don't want to throw this in. I figured very smart, Dinesh. Trying to throw the debate your way here, but very smart to get into America versus Iran up front. I was imagining, and I'm not trying to steer this, though I want to spend some time on it, the whole issue of Israel and the Israel lobby and where that sits, because I know that's Nick's bailiwick, and so that's this is something I'm throwing out there as well, because that's why a lot of Americans have seen. I'm not saying I love the Islamists or any of this, but we've seen regime change. Now, the former head of Al Qaeda in charge of Syria, we see, Hamas being, Israel helped set it up, as a counterbalance. Then we've got, Iran, all of this. And so I think a lot of Americans just don't believe the intelligence establishment. I wouldn't cry tonight if the mullahs fell. So, I mean, what about the AIPAC-Israel issue in all of this, Dinesh? For like a minute.
Well, can I respond actually to what he said?
Sorry, I apologize. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I just want to have equal time. But, I mean, with regard to this, there is just like this, and, forgive me if this sounds, I'm trying to be cordial here, but I do believe there is this engine in the United States from the conservative movement that says it is about Islam. This is Glenn Beck's book. This is sort of the Fox News mantra. It is Islam. Islam is the problem. And I'm not an Islamist. I'm a Catholic. I'm not pro-Islam. And I wouldn't even call myself pro-Iran. I'm pro-America. And to sort of narrow the discussion, let's talk about Islamism. Let's talk about jihadism. I agree with you. There is an element of jihadism in the Middle East. There are these radical Muslims that they want to return to the faith of the pious ones, the ancient Muslims, the first 2 or 3 generations of Muslims. They come from Saudi Arabia. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Iranian-backed groups do not attack Americans on American soil. They're not global powers. They're local powers. They're regional powers. They don't attack the United States.
Why are you fucking losing,
the United States in Beirut or Iraq because the United States is in their territory. We're in the Middle East, we're in the neighborhood, we're backing Israel's brutal war on Lebanon in the 80s, where they commit massacres, castrating people, scalping people, brutal atrocities that are well documented that Israel, their own commission blames Ariel Sharon for this, the defense minister. So, they don't attack us on our soil. The terrorists that do attack us are Wahhabist, they're Salafist. That comes from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia spent billions of dollars promoting Wahhabism, which is the ideology of Al-Qaeda, of ISIS. We backed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. We backed bin Laden. We do arms deals with Saudi Arabia. And you know what? To some extent, this radicalism is going away. And it came from Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, these other places. And it's going away because we made a deal with Mohammed bin Salman. We did arms deals throughout, we're allies throughout, buy oil from them throughout. We didn't invade Saudi Arabia and install a Western liberal democracy. We don't like your regime, we're going to drop bombs on you. We negotiated with them over time, and by the way, they were the biggest problem. As far as Iran is concerned, it's important to analytically determine their strategic interest, because that's how you determine what we have to do about it. Israel wants regime change in Iran. That's why Iran wants a bomb to deter this, which is critical fear. Now, the United States won't let Iran have the bomb. Now, if you want to give Iran the Soviet Union treatment and bankrupt them through maximum pressure and sanctions, that's what we were doing. But you're calling for regime change. We didn't do regime change in the Soviet Union. We allowed them, and we went in there, actually. George Bush managed it, I think, in a good way. We managed a peaceful transition of power after a long period of soft power and smart power that we used against them. You're saying we need to go in and invade Iran, or not maybe invade Iran, but force them to have regime change with CIA operations, foreign media, maximum pressure sanctions, backing Israeli operations. And I would say that's not in America's interest. That's what Israel wants. That's not what we want. Regime change has a terrible track record from Libya, Egypt, Iraq, Syria. There's 0 success stories. I think that I agree with you in some sense. We don't want a nuclear Iran, but we need to understand why we're on the threshold of one, and that has to do with Israel's ambitious and aggressive actions.
Damn, dude, she's juggling some balls.
Restrain Israel. Stop them from attacking Iran. Get Iran to come back to the table and try to get them to agree to some kind of framework like the JCPOA. And maybe we could talk about the JCPOA, because to me that is the most important precedent.
Sort of quick question back to Dinesh to give you a longer response, because I kind of
My potential is
I just figured with me about the current situation. I love the history. We're kind of still in that, and I'm glad you guys are so informed and trying to educate people. But just in general, you guys go wherever you want. Counter back what he was saying today. Then I would like to just interject the current crisis. Where do you see it going? The Fatawa, Trump saying I'm going to kill. You're lucky I don't kill you. I might kill you, the Iranian leader, which I support Trump and love him. But that was provocative. I mean, and also ask you guys where do you think this is going, and is there a path for peace? And then a larger debate, which I figured you guys were going to do first, about the Israel lobby.
All right, let me say some things about regime change to lay a foundation of what I think the MAGA view on this is. Because I think the MAGA view on this is Reagan. In fact, it's a restatement of the Reagan principles, although admittedly in a very different situation. Obviously, in the 70s and 80s, the Reagan focus was on the Soviet Empire. The situation now is totally different. But there are a lot of really bad regimes in the world. And these are regimes that harm our interests in all kinds of ways. So ask a simple question. Is it in our interest for these really bad regimes, and obviously we go for a list and we can agree on what they are, would it be a good idea for these regimes to have change? For the bad guys in these regimes to go away, for the regimes themselves to be toppled, and for something else to take their place. So if we look at Iran, for example, I would say, I am willing to take any chance on getting rid of the mullahs, these jihadi mullahs, okay, maybe Nick's right, maybe he's wrong. I tend to believe the mullahs over Nick. They say that they want to have global jihad. They say that they want a global caliphate. They say that they're building up the strength to do it. They're allying with other people who certainly do have nuclear weapons and do have that kind of power. So would it be a good idea to have a regime change in Iran? Would it be in our interest? Forget about Israel. Of course it would. Now, a separate question is, what are we willing to expend for that to happen? So my question to Nick is, all right, let's start at the very beginning. Would you be willing to expend 50 cents to get the mullahs to leave, to quit, to go home, to become refugees and go to other countries? They can go to luxury apartments in Qatar and elsewhere. And let the Iranian people have a plebiscite. We're not going to go in there. We're not going to arrange tribal meetings. We're going to take over the country. We're going to let them fix it. I would be very confident that what comes after, whatever it is, it could be autocracy, it could be democracy, it's going to be better than what's there now. So I think Nick is so blinded by his hatred of Israel that he's losing sight of America first. He's become automatically friendly to the mullahs, so he's giving them a much more rational account of the Iranian interest than he even gives of American interest. I mean, every time he talks about America, he uses the phrase we. But let's remember that we have alternating regimes between Republicans and Democrats. When you mentioned the Arab Spring, the Arab Spring was basically an anti-American operation organized with the help of Barack Obama. Barack Obama wants Iran to have nukes. He was trying to create space for them to do that and give them money to enable them to do that. Why? Because Obama has an ideology that's anti-American. So we can't just say we and take the blame for what Obama did.
Watch the clock, trying to just be a referee here. Good points.
An ally has been slain.
Well, that's a lot to tackle there. I would say in the first place, and I have to address this first just to get it out of the way. When you say we take the mullahs at their word, you're citing obscure one of their clerical leaders, and you say, well, that guy said it's about Islam. That defines their whole regime. If you want to take them at their word, go to the supreme leader. The supreme leader's the top cleric in Iran, the top cleric in Shiite Islam. It's in their constitution. Supreme leader's got to be a cleric. The Ayatollah promulgated a fatwa 20 years ago that says that attaining nuclear weapons and using them is against Islamic law. And that has been cited over and over again in 2005, 2015. In recent negotiations, they say the supreme leader says it's contrary, and I could use the Islamic doctrine to have nuclear weapons. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we're going to take them at their word when one guy in the government says we're going to take over the world. But you can't have it both ways and say we can't listen to the supreme leader say we don't want nuclear weapons. We have to do one of these. Say that first. Then we get further. We get into this question.
Nick, may I ask you a question about that?
Well, can I? Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, so, and then with regard to regime change, I would contend that regime change is just not desirable. You say, well, how much are you willing to expend for regime change? I'm saying I don't think it's desirable. And here's the evidence for this. You say, well, I'm confident something better will happen. There'll be this democratic plebiscite. What is the history of regime change? When Hosni Mubarak was overthrown in Egypt, you got the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamism, Mohammed Morsi. When Gaddafi was overthrown, you get warlords, you get civil war. When Syria was overthrown, you get this guy al-Julani who's literally from ISIS and Al-Qaeda. In Afghanistan, you still have the Taliban. If we overthrow Iran, and by the way, here's the other evidence. When Israel attacked Iran 2 weeks ago, they thought that the government would collapse and the people would rise up and they would overthrow the government. This is what they said for years. The opposite happened. The people rallied to the supreme leader. They said we're under attack from a foreign entity. They actually rallied in the streets, and there were major funeral processions for the martyrs, the IRGC leaders that were killed. They rallied behind the government. If anything, if this government goes down, I don't know where we think we're going to get something better. We're going to get something more hardcore. The reason why it matters to articulate a lot of leaders is to say, if there were fear of regime change, which is the credible fear of all leaders, every leader wants to stay in power. No leader wants to be defeated to Gaddafi. No leader wants to be deposed and live in exile. If their credible fear is regime change, and we pursue that in one form or another, and it's a little naive to say, but over that, it's just like they have in all these other operations, you're going to get hardliners. You're going to get IRGC commanders that said, our worst nightmare happened. Now we're really in an apocalyptic war. Now we're really, this is the end times. The United States overthrew us. Was that what question?
I forget the exact question.
I'd rather respond to this larger theme here. Because, look, I mean, Nick, you're 26, and so it's history. And the history is like 4 years old. You know, your compass is so narrow that you don't understand that I could give you 40 examples of regime change through history that have all worked out beautifully. Some recent, some more ancient. There was regime change in Spain. Franco fell. Spain became a democracy.
I'm older than you.
You had autocrats all over South America. Those regimes all changed. Many of those countries are much better off as a result.
That's a cringe tactic.
States produced regime change in Mexico. There was a dictator named Santana. He was the one who actually came and fought against us in the Alamo and in Texas. Ultimately, Santana was overthrown. That was excellent regime change. I'm not even counting, of course, the Nazi regime in Japan in World War II. The Soviet Union was regime change of an excellent quality. So regime change sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. A lot of times it depends. I hear about who does it. Alex brought up Israel. I want to get into Israel, so I'm happy to do that. Here's the point I want to make. It is very much, in my view, in our interest and Israel to have regime change in Iran. And if Israel is willing to do it, I would say, I think Trump is stopping it. Trump says, no, I'm going to save the life of Khamenei. And so Trump, in this sense, I think, is more allergic to the risk of regime change and willing to take the money out of power. But what's really important here is Israel is not going to overthrow Trump. It's the other way around. Leave it to Netanyahu, leave it to the Knesset. They would like to overthrow the mullahs, and they have the power to do it. And the fact that they're not doing it shows that, again, to use my old phrase, the great
Imprison monster.
not the other way around. There's another example of this today. Trump is basically pressuring Netanyahu to have a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. Now, first of all, Israel has every moral right to level Gaza. And what I mean by that, quite honestly, when a country attacks you, when you are invaded, like if there's a home invasion, some guy comes into my house, rapes my wife, kills my kids, and then he runs away and I chase after him. And of course, I chase this guy down and stop him. He jumps out of the car, grabs his own kids, and sticks them in front of him. And then he goes, don't shoot, because women and children are in front of me. No, what you've done, you put your children in danger, first by invading my house, and second by using them as human shields. I am not under any moral stricter safety I have every right to attempt to destroy you, and the suffering of your women and children is your activity, and not mine. So my point is, on October 7th, October 7th, by the way, is by Iran. And in Iran, Israel has every right, moral, political, to strike out at Gaza, strike at Iran. And so the United States is the one that's tying their hands. And so once again, even with this Gaza treaty, you can see that the man in charge, the numero uno, is not Netanyahu, it's Trump.
That's some wild logic, man.
That's your great guy. I respect you. Keep it cool. And every 20 years. Let's see it now.
Wow.
of somebody breaking your house, raping and killing your wife and daughter. Then you chase him down, so he uses his kids. They're still innocent. And look, I get And if somebody uses their own kids as human shields, I don't know if somebody killed my wife and daughter, they use their kids as human shields. I'd wait till they drop the kids, right?
Kill the kids? What?
Wait till they drop the kids. What you would look for a clean shot at them, but if you accidentally hit their kids, whose fault would it be, yours or theirs?
I get your point. That's fair. Touche. So go ahead, Nick.
Accidentally? Come on.
Yeah, well,
Israel's accidentally.
I have to do this. You know, you said that I'm a young man and my view of history is so short. Well, let's talk about some of your history here. You were a big supporter of the war in Iraq, and I want to actually read and go back to what you said about it in 2003 and 2007, because I think this is fair. You said in 2003 that Saddam's support for terrorism is attempt to acquire nuclear weapons. For war, peace, and security. That was in 2003. 4 years later, you said the important point about the wars is that 50 million Afghans and Iraqis are free, and for the first time in their history, they can control their own destiny. Liberals emphasize the negative and relish the failures of American foreign policy.
How'd that go?
There's a lot of other quotes here, but this speaks to the kind of hubris of the neocons, of the interventionists, of it.
Dog, you get your ass kicked.
We're up 5-0 and 1, dude. What are you on
Both
about?
of those things turned out not to be true. There was no connection between Al-Qaeda and Saddam. Saddam did not have nukes. Then there's this justification after the fact. Well, you know, it doesn't matter because it's going fine. Well, 20 years later, guess who took over Iraq? Iran. Iran filled the power vacuum. Guess who retook over Afghanistan? So, you know, you can talk about like Germany and Japan. I think those things are fundamentally different. For starters, because Japan attacked us first on our soil. You know why? I mean, that's fundamentally different. But in terms of regime change, this does harm the people of Iraq. And I see videos where you talk about the two situations. They're very similar.
Not much, dog.
I don't even want to get into Gaza because that's a little bit, we can later, but I want to talk specifically about Iraq. In one of your videos, you say, well, unlike Iraq, where you have to rely on government intelligence, with Iran, we know about their facilities, we know where they are, we've seen the tunnels, we've seen the centrifuges, we know what they're doing. Well, isn't that sort of precisely the point? When the United States made the nuclear deal with Iran, they adhered to it for years. The deal was made in 15. The IAEA said they were in compliance with the deal. They had 24-hour monitoring, they had cameras, they had inspections, and they weren't compliant with the deal. A year after the deal, it forced all the other Europeans to pull out as well. And we reneged on our commitments. We pulled out and didn't give them sanctions relief. We, through secondary sanctions, forced the Europeans to pull out from sanctions relief. It was only until 2019 that we started to gradually renew our more commitments. And it was a situation where America killed Qasem Soleimani, which is one of without any kind of restriction. It wasn't until 2021 when Israel attacked Natanz twice. Began to enrich to 60%. Every action has this equal and opposite reaction. Iran was a partner in 2001. Iran helped us build the Northern Alliance. They helped us put Karzai in power in Afghanistan. A few months later, George Bush calls them the axis of evil. This is how we treat Iran. Now, I'm not defending.
I'm just looking at the clock. You guys interrupt each other just every few minutes. Maybe I should just go bing, and then the person interrupts you guys are so polite.
Well, this is I want to do a mea culpa here because I was wrong about the Iraq War. Not because I said Iraq had Iraq War, not because Iraq had nuclear weapons. Of course, we know George Bush, the claim was where they had these so-called weapons of mass destruction. Like the famous movie.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Now, this
Bruh.
information which was given to us from
Ching
the
ching chong.
government, I think, was the first case of where
Yo, dog, ching ching chong.
What a bang wing
It
wing.
came from Israel.
because these intelligence agencies have their own agenda.
Man, can we bring back the fucking Asian mocking in society? That was a fun time in
It came from
racism
Netanyahu.
era.
fucking do it.
Ching ching chong. Yo, you know what, man? I should pioneer this movement.
Yeah, and then you'll be called Uncle Tom.
No, you specifically as a white person. I want you to go around being racist to Asian people. Can you do that for me? Like, you know, like full on like racist, like call them fucking chinks and
9 irons.
yeah. Wait, say that again. 9 irons. I've never heard that one, dude.
So I think a 9 iron is like a hammer, and I guess like they have flat faces, so I guess that's the context.
Nice.
That's Nick's point about Iran. This time we got it right.
Yeah. Fuck.
Those are the same people.
Multiple wars, at least 3, 1948, 1967, 1973. They beat the combined invading armies of Syria, Jordan, Egypt. So the enemy has been slain against them. They kicked them butt. So what they're looking at.
Yeah, the same. Yeah, the same people of of Jesus in Abraham's day are the same people of today's modern state of Israel. Right, got it.
You know, once again, it just gets back to the political framework for the conflict. Nuclear arsenal. Israel's strategic objective is to overthrow the government of Iran. And why? It goes back to the Likud party and their takeover of the government in the late 1970s. They witnessed what happened in the Camp David Accords, which is that Egypt got the in exchange for peace. They witnessed some of the Israeli ministers try to negotiate with the Palestinians. They called it land for peace. We'll give you some of the West Bank in exchange for peace. We'll give Syria the Golan in exchange for peace. Was the peace. They thought that's what was going to happen. And these Likudniks, the people that have been running Israel basically for 2 years, nearly uninterrupted, they said, we can't keep giving up land in exchange for peace. They said, we need to go on the offensive. This is in Oded Yunon's plan in the 1980s. This is in the Clean Break Memo in 1996. And both of these doctrines, and this is consistent throughout, 20, 30-year period, they said we need to go on the offensive, and we need to basically destroy all the big states that are supporting Palestine, all the big states that might pose a threat to Israel. And that is why they pushed for regime change against Saddam. That's why they pushed for destabilization of Syria. And ultimately, they saw Iran as sponsoring Hezbollah and the Shiite group in southern Lebanon, and then eventually Hamas. So Israel has an interest in what they call creating statelets. They don't want big, powerful regimes like Nasser's Egypt, like the Assad dynasty in Syria, like Gaddafi in Libya. They want small, manageable fiefdoms where they're going to dismember Libya into like 3 countries, dismember Syria into Druze, Alawite, and Sunni, dismember Iraq into Shiite, Kurdish, and Sunni. They want to do the same thing to Iran, and that's because, and I agree with you, Israel wants to be safe, but you characterize Israel as small and fledgling and just trying to hold on to their land. They're the only nuclear power, the most sophisticated, the most powerful military. This evidence by this very one. What they want is
Oh, that's a fucking bug, dog.
That's probably in their best interest, but it's not in ours. So that's why I think we should pursue diplomacy with Iran and try to get them to give up their nuclear program with limitations and restrictions without regime change, which is unpredictable and has negative effects for us. Israel wants the regime change, and they want us to pick up the pieces and clean up after them, just as we did in all these other countries. And we deal with the terrorism and the hatred, and we deal with the high gas prices and all the rest of it. So that's the America First position. Restrain Israel from pursuing regime change, restrict Iran's nuclear program, use maximum pressure and Reagan doctrine to do it. I'm fine with that, but I think diplomacy is preferable, and that's in our interest to try it. That's my opinion.
Okay, so I want to go back to the dash here, and we're approaching 15 minutes of this. This is amazing. Guys, stay as long as you want all the way. For Max, I'll just say, because I'm not trying to throw this away.
Holy fuck. That was fucking insane. Oh my god, this is fucking crazy.
Attack my kid.
What?
Make all these statements rhetorical or driving in the ocean. Sure. Did I go to you? I've been pretty good here. I just want to.
Nice, dude. You fucking lost.
Nice, dude. I literally went 1-8 and fucking destroyed them.
But honing in, because both of you guys are very smart, and I'd like to hear not even debate, but also discussion. What do you think's about to happen? I know, Dinesh, you have amazing context. Trump today says twice at Alligator Alcatraz that you're going to do it one day, you're going to love it, and Netanyahu's coming and all this. And usually Trump doesn't just bluff. That sounds really good. Then you have the mullahs putting out a very rare fatwa against Trump and Netanyahu on Sunday. So just in general, looking at that, but I will just say, Israel initiating the latest round and us coming into it, a week into it, and then all of that, and then I could predict that he was going to say he didn't take out the sites. Clearly the sites were highly damaged or obliterated, but then did they hide missile material? Then the mullahs are, we're going to go all the way to enrichment, and we did hide it. And it's like, to get out of this, the mullahs seem to do whatever it is keeps it going. It's very bizarre. And so it's easy for me on like straight Western politics, know who the sides are, what the interests are. When you get into these mullahs and things, it gives me a headache, basically. So, you know, as a moderator, I was supposed to just have easy answers here. A lot of bizarre behavior. Why would the mullahs put a photo out? Well, because maybe they're about to fall. We're seeing some evidence their foreign minister on TV contradicting them, saying the nuclear sites were basically destroyed. So the intel I'm getting is they could fall. What happens if the mullahs are cornered then? And you see, this just is a complex issue. So you guys can finish up with your round of debates about the history and who's who or whatever. My point is, these are two sides absolutely diametrically opposed to each other. And like Trump said, both sides don't know what the fuck they're doing. They've been fighting so long. I agree with that. How could, generally, gut level, where do both of you see this going? We'll go to Dinesh first and finish up with Nick's response if you want. But then where do you see this going next? Can this be de-escalated? What are the paths out of this? Dinesh and Susan.
Yeah, the reason I keep anchoring our discussion, not just in history, but kind of in the facts on the ground, is because it's hard to have a debate when the facts are really fuzzy, right? So you mentioned, Alex, that Netanyahu struck first. But if it is true that Iran was a driving force behind October 7th, then Israel did not strike first. Israel struck second. Second of all, let's remember a lot of times. I mean, if we go back in history not very far, you know, Hitler.
All right, I'll be back.
Find a match, dog.
Attacks Poland and Great Britain. Great Britain declares war on Germany. Japan attacks the United States at Pearl Harbor. Did we just go to war with Japan? No, we didn't. We sent Patton starts taking U.S. troops into Europe. We went after the Nazis, even though the Nazis did not attack us directly. It was the Japanese who did. All right, let me turn to Nick. Nick says that it's the goal of Israel to somehow topple all the big, strong powers in the Middle East. And let's test if that's true. Which are the big, strong powers in the Middle East? And the answer is, certainly in the Muslim world, there are three. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and there is Iran. These are the three big boys of the Middle East, and they are jostling, by the way, for power, the one against the other. Israel has excellent relations with two out of the three. Now, the only reason Israel doesn't have excellent relations with Iran is Iran continues to not only plot and scheme, but openly declare and fund military forces, Hezbollah, also Hamas, that are aimed ultimately at eradicating Israel from the map. That's the meaning of from the river to the sea. So Israel is willing to get along with powerful forces in the region, make friends with some of them. It gave back to Egypt. It's on good terms with Saudi Arabia. I think it would be on good terms with Iran if Iran wasn't driving the aggression from its side. So I completely reject Nick's idea that somehow Iran is fighting a defensive war. Nobody wants to invade Iran, least of all Israel. Israel would like to have nothing to do with Iran. They've got a successful society on their own. Now, you're asking about Trump and kind of where all of this is going. And I think I want to highlight the simple point that, look, Trump is actually a kind of master of this kind of, well, I'm going to call it mafia diplomacy. By that I mean that he acts like Don Corleone, he twists people's arms, he basically tries to pull everybody into line, and sort of this idea. Number one, when Trump basically started talking about the idea of striking the Iranian facilities, there was a massive scream on the part of the, let's call it the Nick Fuentes camp, but there were many others in it. This is disastrous. We're going to be in a war. We're going to have tremendous casualties. The Iranians are going to strike back at us. Just wait for it. None of this actually happened. So if I'm going to show a little modesty about Iraq, it would be good for Nick to admit that he and so many others were completely wrong about what the effect of Trump's strikes were going to be. Number two, Israel is a country of 10 million people or 12 million people. The United States is 350 million plus. Are you seriously telling me that Israel is controlling America?
Let's stop there. You just got 4 minutes. Let's Nick, then we're going to go to break and come back. I've got questions. And the listeners have questions.
APAC.
Nick, responding to that.
Sure. So to address the first point, Saudi Arabia is not a major power.
Everybody
we give them a lot of
dies.
weapons
Some
and things
just
like
need
that.
a
But
little
Saudi
help.
Arabia has a small population, mostly foreign workers. It's held together by this weird dynasty from 100 years ago because they sell oil. They couldn't even defeat the Houthis in Yemen.
What a
they were
fucking
war with the Houthis for
faggot,
10
dude.
years
Holy
with
shit.
American backing, they said they were fighting Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They couldn't beat back these guys. They're pirates, effectively. So Saudi Arabia is not. You're effectively in a
What a bunch of
Israel
fucking
already.
losers,
They,
man.
like the Emirates, like Bahrain, are going to enter into the Abraham Accords. They're submitted to Israel. And that's the fate. If you are against the West, if you're against Israel and the United States, you get overthrown, you get regime changed, you get invaded,
What?
civil war, or you're like Egypt and Jordan, where you get bribed and become a Western
Well, for
puppet.
one, my teammate took the champion I wanted to play, even though he's not playing the lane that he's supposed to be played in. And then the other team picked two character, or I guess 3 characters to fucking counter that guy. Like, people are just fucking weird, bro. And then someone leaves, like,
Puppet to Israel,
shit is fucking...
and Saudi Arabia wants to follow suit. So I would just say that, and that's obviously the case also because Netanyahu and other ministers in the Israeli government said for 30 years they want regime change in Iran. That's just not even disputed. In the mid-1990s, they're calling for regime change. In 2006, Netanyahu's calling for regime change. They're publishing videos all the time in Farsi and English saying the Iranian people need to rise up. It's just not even a question that they do want that. And they want that because Iran is a rival. Iran has one of the largest populations. It's often said about the Middle East, you've got 3 countries, Turkey, Egypt, Iran. The rest are tribes of flags. Iran has a big middle class, big economy, oil wealth. They have a lot of intelligent people. They're a threat to Israel's security and hegemony in the region. And that's why Israel wants to depose that country, along with all the other ones with ambitions, whether they be Islamist or pan-Arabist. With regard to Israel, and you know, we can maybe get into this topic because I think we've sort of settled a lot of this other stuff. We're looping a bit. But to get to the question of Israel driving U.S. foreign policy, it's pretty clear. You know, Trump initiated diplomacy with Iran.
No cure for fools.
Netanyahu at the White House for talks about terror. He announced that he was going to engage Iran in negotiations over the nuclear program. That same day, Netanyahu went on TV and said the only deal we will accept is if we get to blow up Iran's nuclear program and if they follow the Libya model. The Libya model is where Libya gave up their nukes with inspections and then we regime changed them 8 years later. And that was obviously a poison pill to blow up the talks. They've said repeatedly, just last week, the defense minister came out and said, we are pursuing decapitation of the supreme leader. And when asked, did you get permission from the United States? He said, we don't need permission on such matters. And I believe, of course, you absolutely do. I wish it was as you're describing, where we are in control of Israel and they're our client. This has never been the case. Israel was the driving force behind the road to the war in Iraq. They're the driving force behind the road to the war in Iran. And the question of, and this is the last thing, just briefly, was I wrong about the strikes in Iran? We're not in a war in Iran. Of course we're in a war in Iran. Trump killed Soleimani in 2020. He comes back into office and picks up where he left off. Israel attacks Iran, and then we bomb Fordo. And this is going to be the case in the future. Iran says they're not giving up enrichment. The United States says you have to have 0% enrichment. It's setting the stage for more strikes. We've been in a state of hostilities.
Okay. Nick Fuentes, stay right there. We're going to take a break here. I'm going to ask both of you during the break, if the producer is, how long you want to stay?
Trump literally called it the 12-day war himself.
And I think this is a really very professional, intellectual debate. This is not people trying to make points for the other person. They're both very knowledgeable. This is a very former head of a federal agency, best-selling author, filmmaker.
My ear is yours.
Disagree with his politics, agree with him. The guy's a phenomenon. You know, I don't know any 26-year-old knows half what he knows. It's very refreshing to hear this. I'm not saying he's going over the audience's head. Our audience is way more advanced than most people, but I imagine a lot of people, millions watching on X right now. This is a big viral thing. I'm having to, like, a lot of what they're saying, like, remember it? Oh, yeah. So I'm having trouble following some of this with Dinesh, some of the things he's saying, and Nick, that I think about it and go, oh, yeah, that's true. So it was, you know, this is not baby time here. This is not, you know, real simple, mindless slogans. This is a real debate here. This is what debates, I think, really should be, like the Lincoln-Douglas debates. So we'll find out how long they want to stay. This is a whole other issue. Because I told the crew on the X post, asking what are your questions when the debate launched, we can't find out of thousands of questions, maybe 10 that are pro-Israel. And I'm not, again, I don't want to just come on here and read anti-Israel stuff. I want to get both sides for a debate. We literally, which the poll numbers show, the whole world's turning against Israel. And they got nuclear weapons. Like Michael Savage is pro-Israel. He came on last Friday, but he said, no, Israel's going the wrong way. The whole world's turning against them. This is going to get Israel destroyed. They got nukes. I mean, whether you love Israel or hate them, they get cornered. Samson option. So, I mean, I'm sitting here telling the crew, get me a pro-Israel comment on X. And, I mean, literally, they found like one. I mean, I've got an issue here. Yeah, they're all, you know, it's out of control. Dinesh is a great guy. I'll put him in jail. He was put in jail by Obama for supporting Trump. So, and by the way, I'm very thankful for Trump overall on domestic policy, economy, everything. I think he did what he thought was best with the Iran strikes. I hope it works out. And I, you know, we need to be adults about this. We don't be like the left that calls for arresting anyone we disagree with. And I'm just being honest here. I think it's shocking. Everybody's on X saying arrest Dinesh D'Souza. Don't worry, it's already happened to him. So
They're trolls, Alex. They're trolls.
Sorry, you get 2 minutes for
I mean,
go ahead.
They want you saying it.
maybe what we can do is do a brief sort of summary of our positions for a couple of minutes. And then, you know, let's set a time and take questions, and we can each get a chance to answer them. And, you know, let's see, it's a little after 8 Central Time. Why don't we go to 9 if it's agreeable? I think we sort of agreed 32 hours total. And so I'm good with that.
No, sounds good.
I'd
You know
like
what I
to
can do? You know what I can do? Because I got no serious questions on X. I mean, it's just, I'll read some of these. I mean, they're good questions, but it's all like foaming at the mouth. You know, just whatever. The point is, I'll read them. Okay?
Alex.
I'm just being honest. Like, I want to get both sides.
See, Nick knows.
But I want at least an hour. So let's go to 10 after. You know, just whatever. The point is, I'll read them. Okay?
Alex.
I'm just being honest. Like, I want to get both sides. I'm not kidding.
See, Nick knows.
But I want at least an hour. So let's go to 10 after 9. I'll get that both from you because I want to take a bunch of comments. Here's the toll-free number. Fire up the phone system. Never fear, the phones are here. We'll have people call and actually have some real questions. I'm not like, oh, look at Joel trying to get pro-Israel questions. No, I'm not just going to like literally read 50 questions in a row anti-Israel. I want to get both sides for real debate. So the toll-free number, fire the system up right now, 877-789-2539. 877-789-2539, 877-789-ALEX. But it shows you just 2 years ago, half the stuff would be pro-Israel. That's a whole other issue of what the poll numbers show, the world turning against Israel, which again, even if you hate Israel, they got nuclear weapons. They're not going away unless it's in Armageddon. 877-789-2539. Dinesh D'Souza is a best-selling author and one of the top documentary filmmakers of all time. Dinesh D'Souza, DineshD'Souza.com. And of course, you can find that Nick Cointest Rumble, where he dominates. Nick Cointest on X. Nick Cointest. We're going to take a short little 4-minute break, and we're going to let both men have somebody get played. To make a summation and read some Israel off the map comments on there. The biggest sale in the history.
Oh man, dude, it's the trolls. It's the trolls. Maybe I should just explain to Alex, hey man, they do that because they want to see themselves being acknowledged live on the show. Okay, here we go. This is good, man. By the way, shout out to Dinesh for doing this. Hopefully we're one step closer to getting Charlie Kirk to finally debate Nick, because he refuses to do it. I think we all know why.
That's going to be as far as I can here. Who went last? Was it Dinesh or was it Nick?
Well, Alex, I went first in the beginning, so why don't Nick go first for 6, and I'll go for 6, and we'll go to questions.
Perfect. So, and I have one question after that, but
Yeah, sounds good to me. So to sum up actually what we were talking about so far, the question is, what is America first? What's putting America first? I'm not pro-Iran, I'm not in isolationist, or I'm not even necessarily opposed to the United States invading other countries of law. What I'm opposed to is a policy that isn't in our interest. And I think that regime change is something that historically in the Middle East never goes our way. It leads to chaos, civil war, ethnic cleansing, failed states, worse regimes than we got before. I think the U.S. interest in Iran is to prevent them from acquiring a nuclear bomb. I don't think they're pursuing one right now. I think they have a latent threat of regime change from Israel. I think that on the flip side, Israel's been pushing for regime change in Iran like they have in virtually every other country for 30 years. That's why the American first position, how do we balance these states, which are, they both have zealotry, they both have terrorism. Neither of them are the United States. How do we balance those competing forces forces in the Middle East. I think we restrain Israel from pursuing regime change in Iran. I think we make a deal with Iran to restrict their nuclear activity. And that comes from a deep respect and humility about the nature of regime change, the size of Iran, the undertaking that regime change would be, and with respect to what our own foreign policy is. I think that we had a nuclear deal with Iran and it was going well. They were abiding by it. We had monitoring, we had 24/7 cameras, we knew what they were doing. We have engaged Iran in good faith before. They've demonstrated by telegraphing strikes and through calibrating them that they're rational, that they can be patient strategically. And I think that we should attempt to do that again. I think that Trump and Biden both tried to do that over the past 12 years. They've been repeatedly sabotaged by Israel. Their dream is to drag us into a confrontation where we fight their regime change war for them. And I think that's something that serves only the interest of Israeli hegemony and not the interest of American strategic withdrawal and from the Middle East. We can focus on a real rival, which is China. So that's kind of my big picture view. It is based on fundamental assumptions about the nature of Iran's regime and what Iran wants. And the same is true about Israel, what the nature of the Israeli regime is and what they want. And so that's a summary of what I think the America First position is in this conflict.
All right, so you only win for like less than 3 minutes.
I'll try to keep it brief as well. I've been trying to sort of figure out one day as this debate has been going on. And I've come to a kind of startling conclusion. I mean this only tentatively because I don't know enough about it. From what I'm hearing, Nick Fuentes is a Democrat. And what that means is that he can't be America First because he is echoing all the tired, discredited, have faith in the goodwill of our enemies, have faith in treaties. This is what Democrats said throughout Reagan, throughout the Cold War. They trust the Russians. They're trustworthy. They want peace too, don't they? And now, we have.
I don't think Nick said that.
We had a deal. It was Obama's deal, remember? You think Obama was a good guy? You think Obama was America First? What do you think Obama was up to? America lies. Obama's idea was to strengthen our enemies and undermine our friends. Why do you think he got rid of Mubarak in Egypt? Because he was an ally of the United States. And then we got the Muslim Brotherhood in power in Egypt. That was not Obama's not the same as Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was an idiot. He was an nincompoop. We'll give him the Presidential Nincompoopery Award. Obama's malevolent. Obama represents ultimately, if you follow what Obama says, it's basically what our enemies want, not what we want. So notice, Nick, how close your position is to Obama. The Iranians are reasonable. The Iranians don't have any imperialistic ambitions. They don't have any real ill will toward Israel. Their militarization is purely defensive. We can make a peaceful deal with them.
How's it feel to be Canadian?
I guess that's the one difference with Obama.
I don't know. Meet someone who is one and then tell me how they feel.
Well, I've met you.
Yeah, who's that? I haven't met him. You? It's an interesting name.
Nice, dude. Well, you telling me you're not Canadian?
Infowars
I don't know, you tell me.
producers, man.
Yeah, I think so, dude.
The whole idea is you want to weaken your enemies and strengthen your friends. That's what America First means. It means promoting American interests in the world. And you seem to be promoting the opposite. You seem to be saying, our enemies aren't that bad, and our friends aren't our real friends. Why don't we put some pressure on our friends? And
Not the point.
Trust our enemies more? I mean,
It's not the point, dude.
it's basically straight out the logic of the Democratic Party. It's been disproven time and time again. And I think you're wrongly drawing lessons from the Iraq War.
What the fuck was that, dude? It's just a waste of time, bro.
I didn't really expect where you were going with that, but in retrospect, I should have. When you said this is tentative, and I just met you, I thought maybe it was going to be positive, but I should have known it was going to be.
I don't know you, but let me tell you who you are.
big difference. We have the same national security apparatus. Obama had the same defense secretaries Bush. And we maintained very much a similar foreign policy under Obama than we did under Bush. And then again under Trump, Biden, and then Trump again. A deep state, the Pentagon, CENTCOM, National Security Council, the Directorate of National Intelligence, the IC. I mean, all these people are permanent bureaucrats. I don't think there's a lot of daylight between Republicans and Democrats. I think that's a meaningless distinction. I wouldn't say, I don't know what that means to be a Democrat. I'm a Catholic, I'm a reactionary, I'm in favor of immigration moratorium, I'm voting for Trump in 16. Like, I don't know where you get off saying I'm a Democrat other than that. I think we should pursue diplomacy. And by the way, it's not based on good faith towards our enemies like Iran or Russia or China for that matter. It's based on foreign policy realism. I'm a realist. I'm not a liberal internationalist or a liberal globalist where I believe there's a world of friendly democracies and autocratic foes. I would say that Israel is similarly a foe. Israel spies on Americans. Israel has planned and perpetrated false flag attacks against Americans in the past. When 9/11 happened, Bibi Netanyahu said it's a good thing because now we can sympathize with what they go through. And they looked at that as a gift because they thought that we would support them against the Palestinians, and then we would support them against their other rivals in the region. So this idea that we have friends and foes, and Israel's part of the Avengers and the Iran is part of the bad guys. I think this is just juvenile and childish, and it's like I'm debating Fox News.
And back to Nick's response back to that. I have a few questions for you.
I'm trying. Not to laugh and be distracting.
Yeah, the polarization of the world is not the result of some sort of ideological fantasy. It's a simple reality. You can see it in the animal kingdom. If there are two strong animals that are in a herd, they will fight each other for leadership. If there are two powerful countries in the world, they will become rivals, and the small countries around them will basically take sides, and you will begin to see this kind of polarization.
Survival of the fittest.
It's not survival, it's a description of how the world thrives in an animal. You'd be very naive if you don't see that force is at the bottom of international politics. Now, domestically, American politics is divided generally into two camps. Now, I realize that they say, they're just the same. But the stupidity of saying that, they're just the same. It would make no difference if Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan won the 1980 election. I honestly believe that if Reagan wasn't in power for 2 terms, the Soviet Union might not have collapsed. In a sense, Nick is saying he voted for Trump in 16, but it didn't really matter. It wouldn't have mattered if Hillary was president because Hillary would have been pretty much the same as Trump. And similarly, Nick is saying now that he wouldn't mind if Kamala Harris won the 2024 election because after all, the country would be pretty much the same because the two parties are a uniparty, and in both parties, and there is a kind of drinking at the swamp establishment, and Republicans and Democrats are part of that. Nevertheless, there are distinctions that really matter. This country already, in just a few months, is very different than it would be with Kamala Harris. The border would not be secure. We wouldn't be looking at making these tax cuts permanent. We wouldn't be looking at 10,000 new border agents.
It's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're debating.
Matters. Trump has made a difference.
Turn
I'm
it
not saying
straight
that
and
Trump is
false.
not open to criticism. I'm not saying that MAGA means some kind of we all have to follow Trump like the Pied Piper. But what I am saying is that Trump has proven far more often to be right than wrong. And if I'm choosing to hear the foreign
Thank you. We've come back from Nick.
What unifies Republicans and Democrats, the Uniparty, is Zionism. Okay?
I would say yes. I don't think it's even controversial at this point to say that there really is no distinction, especially when it comes to matter of foreign policy. I mean, Biden Hezbollah and from the Houthis and actually offensively bomb them. Bomb the Houthis, bomb the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. And for all people like to say, you know, the Democrats are abandoning our friends and empowering our enemies. No. They gave a huge aid package to Israel, our big ally. So I think that whether we had Kamala or Trump, we would be engaging in strikes against Iran right now. I don't think anyone even doubts that slightly. And so what is it? I don't care about being Republican or Democrat. It means nothing. I'm independent. It's a question of what's in our interest. You can say, you can appeal to this tribalism and say, you know, you sound like Jimmy Carter. Okay, that's 50 years ago. What's in America's interest is not another regime change.
You know, what's one of your favorite cars?
In what context? Just like, no matter how much it is, or one that's like realistically attainable?
Like if you were to get one classic car.
One classic car?
Yeah.
Oh, yo, shout out to the chat.
Am I assuming
shout
that
out to
the one in the garage
Fresno
is still
Racer
there?
for $100 Rumble Rant.
Say that again?
Whoa, sorry, that was loud.
Do I assume that the one in the garage is still there?
No.
It's not?
No.
Either a 70 of that, or a 68 Burger.
You gotta pick one. You gotta pick one.
I'd probably go with the one in the garage.
One in the garage. What if your wife got you that car, but you found out later that she had to shoot a fucking gangbang inside the car?
It's kind of fucking retarded,
Yeah. They came all over the interior of the car. All the fucking dudes.
Then I'm getting the interior clean and getting a full fucking cleaning in my house. And suing her for mental.
But dog, she got you a car. What if nobody's willing to clean the interior for you?
Then I'll sell it, but then no one's gonna buy it. Fucking gas, dude.
Yeah, because the videos online, they can recognize the car.
Yeah. So what they're watching?
So yeah.
The fuck are they watching?
Yeah. They're watching your wife getting gangbang. What the fuck you talk?
It's fucking insane, dude.
I got it turned up. Sorry, guys, if that blew out your speakers. Shout out to Fresno Racer for the $100 Rumble Rant. 07's in the chat to Fresno Racer says, yo, Drew, appreciate you. Would love 8 hours full call-in. I don't know if I'm gonna be streaming for 8 hours, man. But definitely, maybe we'll do some call-ins. If not tonight, Thursday before the 4th of July. But what's interesting here is Dinesh keeps getting away from the obvious common interest in unification between Republicans and Democrats is freaking Israel. It's Zionism. Everybody knows this. You can't get in there. You can't get in there. I kind of wish Nick would just keep push him. You know, just push him into forcing him into address that.
Nick said, I think Trump's very soon for office. This will be a big crisis.
Also, real quick, shout out to JLu714. Just gifted 10 subscriptions in the chat. 07's in the chat. 10 subscriptions. Congratulations to all of the recipients. Let's keep this thing going. And by the way, guys, this is not all we're covering. I wanted to watch this. It is viral, like Alex said. So it's newsworthy. But we will also get into our news coverage for the evening tonight once they wrap this up, this debate. But let's go back. But shout out, Fresno Racer Shout out also for the 10 memberships from JLou71407's in the chat.
I think that the Trump strike on the 3 nuclear facilities was a brilliant move because it was basically what it was is essentially an overnight. Don't suffer a single casualty. They don't even know we're there. They have no control of their own skies. But not a single fighter plane was really needed. Around these two bombers for no reason, and then they all came back. And what is the result? It's tripling of Iran's nuclear. So, whether they were at 80%, whether they were getting there, whether they were almost there, whether they were weeks away, whether they were months away, who cares? The program is now suffered devastating setback. And even though initially the media tried to deny it, they've now pretty much come out and admitted it. Machiavelli said something very profound. People can get revenge for small injuries, but they cannot get revenge for large injuries. And what that means is that slowly rebuild their power. And so this is actually the downside. Striking and then leaving, snatching judgment call about whether what's going to come later is better or worse. We have certain plans. One of them is we're not committing troops. We're not going to commit troops unless Iran attacks U.S. borders or U.S. bases. If they do that, then we're not.
Questions, Dash. In the middle, is there someone saying, and which goes back to some of the questions. On the other side, they did like in 2020 when they attacked Iraq. They called for safety missiles in the desert. They did as a face-saving event. They did that again this time. Called to heaven they were going to hit Qatar, and did that. So they're so crazy. Why did they celebrate that?
Because, like I said, come back to the quote from Machiavelli. If somebody is down on their back and you're standing on top of them, they're going to behave themselves wonderful. They're going to be very strike. Because the logic, if they strike us, we're going to strike them 10 times harder. And so they were like good pussycat. They basically were like, we'll behave ourselves, we'll pretend to attack you, and you pretend to
Your turret has
we
been
don't know
destroyed.
that, and I think we should take preparations to I'm not a believer as Nick is in Iranian goodwill. I think if they put fatwas on you, there are going to be radical Muslims who are going to be willing to carry.
So is Iran a threat or not?
Some of those in this country. So we need to be taking preemptive or precautionary steps to make sure that we are protected.
So yeah, Nick, that's a lot to unpack. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the original question where this is going, I think we're trapped. I think we're trapped in a situation where now that there will be more we're not getting out of this.
Of course.
It
It's not over.
We had to deal with Iran. We overcame decades of distrust and decades of suspicion from Iran. We made a deal that satisfied Russia, China, the E3 countries, European, France, Germany, and the UK, and the United States. We had a deal with monitoring, with verification, with customers. Like Dinesh himself said, we know everything about their program because they disclosed it to us. And And the IAEA report said they had no weapons program since at least 2009, but probably not since 2003. So we had a deal. Everybody was playing by the rules for years. Trump pulled us out, and now they don't trust us again. Trump killed their generals. Now they hate us. Then Trump engages them in diplomacy when he comes back to power. And there's all this fanfare about they're going to make a deal. We might be able to make terms with the United States. And what does Trump do? He we did not destroy Fordo. Stockpile. They said we weren't even trying to destroy their nuclear stockpile. So now what they're saying is Iran still has a stockpile. They have centrifuges we don't know about. Iran says we're never giving up enrichment. They're moving heavy equipment to Fordo to rebuild it. And what are the Israelis saying? The Israelis are saying we're going to treat Iran like Lebanon, which means we're going to bomb them all the time with no restriction. So, you know,
Not gonna stop.
Israel never makes good on ceasefires. They made one with Hamas. They didn't implement the second phase. They made one with Hezbollah. They bombed them throughout. None of them trust Israel. None of them trust us. And now, if we don't make a deal with Iran, it really is only one of us. Iran doesn't trust us. Russia didn't bail them out. They're clearly vulnerable to Israeli intelligence. The only deterrent that they can get to prevent further hostilities, you know, now they're talking about pulling out of the NPT and maybe getting a nuclear weapon. So, as far as I'm concerned, our fate is sealed. Israel orchestrated this every step of the way.
That's the plan.
Engineered the confrontation in April of last year. They attacked Iranian generals in Syria. They provoked the other confrontation in July. They killed the leader of Hamas in Tehran.
Nick, I want to go to comments and questions now. Both of you make very interesting points. Quick analysis.
Just a really quick one. Just a really quick, just a quick response, because it seems to me that Nick has been saying one thing, saying the opposite, and saying the opposite again. And here's what I mean. At the beginning of this debate, Nick, you said
Dude, I'm about to fucking leave, bro.
Correct.
convince them not to do it. It's kind of like saying it's in my interest to do something, but because you put a piece of paper in front of me, I'm gonna go, gee, I'm not gonna do that because I'm such a nice guy. No, if it's in Iran's interest to build a nuclear weapon, they're gonna try to do it. Or they're gonna try to do it one way or the other, according to your own logic. Then you said, we tried to bomb their facilities. And you said, to do it, and they're not that far from doing it now. We were certainly right to bomb them. If anything, we should have had a second round of bombing to make sure we finished the job, according to you.
Let him respond.
Oh.
Nuclear hedging. And what does that mean? It means that they have the infrastructure, the expertise, and the technology to make a bomb if the security situation demands it. The reason they probably could have developed a bomb by 2012. The earliest estimate says that Iran could have had a bomb. They had all the pieces in place by 2010. 2012 is when they could have had a bomb. Why did they not do that? The United States has a non-proliferation policy. Not having any latent ability would be weakness. It would also be countries that don't have nukes can be destroyed by countries that have them. So that's why it's hedging. It's hedging their best. Wait, let me finish. because this is really important. So the reason why the changes this dynamic is because if we can give Iran confidence and assurances, we are not going to invade you. We don't have designs on overthrowing you. Then Iran can have restrictions on their nuclear program, and they can assure us they're not going to. I said there's other countries that do this too. China, South Korea, Taiwan, they're hedging as well. Why do they have nuclear programs? North Korea and China. Now the reason they don't have nuclear bombs is because they can rely upon the United States to deter attacks from North Korea and China. If that changed, it would be in their interest to develop a bomb. So it has to be a level of confidence. It has to be a security situation. So they have the ability to make one, but they want to fight aggression. Not having one makes them vulnerable. Now, we blew up that trust. That's why Iran is increasing their stock.
So revenge.
I agree with you, Nick. And the CIA came out months after I said this and said attacking them may accelerate them towards finishing their bomb with nuclear hedging. So let me ask Dinesh D'Souza that, and we got to go with these questions and comments. I'm making you guys stay. We have to do it. Bunch of callers, bunch of comments.
Has destroyed a
What about
turret.
that?
Your team has destroyed an
This
inhibitor.
accelerates them into that. I think that is common sense, Dinesh.
Yeah, but there is a little bit of sometimes I think what happens is we get caught in this fight of hedging or I got a hedge here. It's very simple. If you have a guy who lives down the street, the official doctrine is death to Alex Jones or death to Nick Fuentes. And that guy in his basement is making a call. And he has the ability to deliver this bomb in a catastrophic way, then guess what? Some friend in his neighborhood, let's call it Israel, and say, oh, listen, we're happy to go do the job for you. We will go clobber that guy, but guess what? There's one part of the room we can't get to. If you will lend us a plane for one night, we will bomb that part of the house, and that will be the end of that. No more debt to America. You'll be able to sleep safely at night, you and your family. They keep saying death to America, but we don't really believe them because lots of other people say similar things. And so therefore, we're going to do an Obama-type deal in which, by and large, we kind of look the other way. We don't even have to say fully monitor what we're doing. They can have a motive to do it, an interest in doing it, and they can do it pretty much whenever they want. You're saying we should when not like that. He was in the Pentagon meeting, 7 countries of regime change, and we saw all that. That's why Americans are against this. It's not because we support the mullahs. It's because, you know, we see this larger issue, and that's my personal view. I don't like the mullahs, but at the same time, I don't want to be lying to a quagmire much worse than Vietnam. 93 million people, potentially hidden nuclear weapons, and Russia and China have said no more dominoes are going to fall. This is part of a proxy war in World War III that's really already begun between the West and China and Russia. We all know that. So both of you, just 1 minute on where the world is in World War III already begun, and you guys agree with me that this is a proxy war or a hybrid war battleground between what's left of the West and the emerging new multipolar world. I would just sum it up in a single sentence or two, and that is basically I trust Trump in the same way that I trusted Reagan. I think Trump himself, just like the rest of us, was there for Iraq. He learned the lessons of Iraq the same as the rest of us. The difference is, this is a guy who knows how to operate on the global chessboard. He's already proven it in his first term. He didn't drag us into any wars. He has been a no-war president. And I think he's a no-war president now. I think he's trying to settle the issue in the Middle East the same way as he's trying to settle the issue.
And anyone that comes out and is like, "Oh, there, you're."
This is the simple ice water hack that took me from 184 to 123 in just weeks. I've been keeping quiet about it for a while because I wanted to make sure it worked first. But when I went from 180
has passed. Trump is signing it tomorrow on the 4th of July. And from here on out, no more excuses. I expect to be at around 10 to 15,000 deportations a day soon. At least by the end of this year. At least. No more excuses, guys. No more excuses. As I've been consistent on this show. I'm like, okay, I understand the argument. We need the big, beautiful bill. We need more resources. We were all talking about that before the election. Pretty big price tag with mass deportations, but is there really a price on American sovereignty?
Always
I don't
by my
believe so.
side.
It's got to be done. So here we are. All right? So here we are. And I'm expecting some mass deportations now. That's what I'm expecting. A real uptick in the next 6 months. And we need to be at around 10 to 15,000 a day at the least. By that, at the latest, by this time of next year. All right? At the latest, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no more excuses, guys. This is it. This is it. This was the last argument. This was the last argument as to why the deportation numbers are so low on top of the judicial coup. However, massive, massive win for President Trump. And obviously there are more nuances to the no tax on tips. And I'm actually interested to take a look at those specifics once Trump signs the thing, to see what the caps are, what they are not. A lot of information going back and forth on that. Obviously, you know, Democrats are running around claiming that millions of Americans are going to lose their Medicaid and their Medicare. But in reality, they mean illegal aliens. Illegal aliens. All the food stamps and SNAP illegal aliens and those committing fraud and abuse. Fraud and abuse. Okay, yes, you're done. I'm not giving you money. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of paying for this crap. And some defunding of Planned Parenthood. I want to see the specifics on that. If that's just for another year or longer, we'll take a look at that as well. Once we get the, I want to see once Trump signs the final piece, just exactly where this thing is at, and some more. However, President Trump is taking the victory lap today. He is slated to speak in Des Moines, Iowa tonight. We'll be covering his rally that is going down tonight with our coverage. President Trump's America 250th kickoff rally at the Iowa. Did I say Ohio? Sorry, Iowa State Fairgrounds, Des Moines, Iowa. He's slated to take the stage in about 15 minutes. So if you're just tuning in, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, hit the bell notification, please copy the link, share this everywhere, and as always, guys, 100% independent. You guys have been killing it. The number one way, because people are always asking, how do we support you, Drew? We love the show. We love your independent. We want to support independent media. Guys, the number one way is drop gifted memberships, gifted subs. Not only are you supporting this show, but you are blessing Rigas in the chat, and that's what I love to see. I love to see I hate to use the word community because it sounds super commie, but, you know, the fellowship. I love to see the fellowship blessing one another, supporting the show, and that's what I really love. I love that dynamic here on Rumble with all of our Rigas in the chat. So if you would love to support the show, drop some gifted memberships. Bless a Rigga, no Riggas left behind, or a Rumble rant. And we appreciate you guys. And I'm going to be live maybe 2.5 to 3 hours. It's 4th of July weekend, guys. And I apologize I was not live last night. My family, we like to do 4th of July month. You know, that's just, I don't just celebrate the weekend or the day. The 4th of July is like a whole month for me. So yesterday had some stuff, you know, planning for. Obviously, I wanted to make sure we were live tonight, so apologize I was not able to go live last night, getting ready for the 4th of July weekend, obviously. But so now we were able to go live tonight, and I will not be live, obviously, for the 4th of July, unless something massive or huge goes down, you know, we're going to cover it. But a happy 4th of July to every single one of you guys. Love you all. Celebrating Independence Day. But, yes, so I should be live maybe, depending on how long